Commander Zixtral of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force stood frozen, his four eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. The scene before him was unlike anything he'd witnessed in his 150 stellar cycles of existence. On the view screen of his command ship, a single humanoid creature from that backwater death planet Earth was systematically dismantling an entire Kralax invasion force. "So by the void," muttered his second-in-command Vreen, "is this some kind of elaborate joke? Did someone spike our nutrient tanks with hallucinogens again?" Zixtral's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "If this is a joke, Vreen, then the universe has a seriously twisted sense of humor. And no, I haven't forgotten about your little prank from last solar cycle. My tentacles still haven't forgiven you for that glitter incident." The bridge crew, composed of various alien species from across the galaxy, watched in stunned silence as the human continued her rampage. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed at odds with the carnage she was unleashing. One moment she was disarming a Kralax warrior with a move that looked suspiciously like a dance step. The next she was using said warrior's weapon to take down 3 more of his comrades. "Someone get me a status report." Zixtral barked, his voice a mixture of authoritative command and barely concealed panic. "And someone else fetch me a stiff drink, preferably something that will make me forget I ever saw this." A young Plixna officer, her bioluminescent skin flashing anxiously, piped up, "Commander, our sensors indicate that the human's vital signs are, well, they're off the charts. Her adrenaline levels alone would kill most sentient species." Fascinating, Zixtral deadpanned. "Any other observations, officer? Obvious. Perhaps you'd like to inform me that space is big or that black holes are a tad on the dense side." The Plixna officer blinked rapidly, her skin cycling through a rainbow of embarrassed hues. "Well, sir, there is one other thing." The human appears to be laughing. As if on cue, the audio feed crackled to life, filling the bridge with a sound that sent shivers down the spines, or equivalent anatomical structures of every alien present. It was a laugh, yes, but not one of joy or mirth. This was the laugh of someone who had stared into the abyss and found it hilarious. "Oh, come on, you oversized cockroaches," the human taunted, her voice a mixture of battle cry and stand-up comedy routine. "Is this really the best the mighty Kralax Empire can do? I've had tougher workouts with my grandma's knitting circle." Zixtral watched as the human, a female if he remembered his xenobiology correctly, executed a backflip over a Kralax energy blast. She landed on the shoulders of another warrior, using him as a springboard to launch herself into a group of reinforcements. "You know," she continued, her tone conversational despite the fact that she was currently in the process of tying 2 Kralax soldiers together with their own tentacles. "When I signed up for this cultural exchange program, I expected more culture and less, attempted planetary genocide. Talk about false advertising." Vreen leaned closer to Zixtral, his voice a worried whisper. "Sir, should we intervene?" Zixtral shot his second-in-command a look that could have curdled milk in 3 different star systems. "Intervene? Are you out of your mind? Did you miss the part where she's taking on an entire army single-handedly? Besides, Galactic Peacekeeping Force, remember? We're here to keep the peace, not jump into the middle of whatever this is." "But Sir," Vreen pressed, "the Kralax are a recognized species in the Galactic Confederation. Shouldn't we at least try to, negotiate?" Zixtral barked out, a laugh sounded suspiciously like a sob. "Negotiate with her? Be my guest, Vreen. I'm sure she'd be delighted to sit down for a nice cup of tea and a chat about interstellar politics. Just mind your limbs, I hear humans have a habit of ripping them off when they're in a mood." Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Sarah Havok Martinez was having the time of her life. When she'd volunteered for NASA's new xenodiplomacy program, she'd expected a few tense negotiations, maybe some awkward cultural misunderstandings. What she hadn't expected was to be dropped into the middle of an alien invasion force with nothing but her wits, her military training, and a serrated combat knife she'd smuggled in her boot just in case. She called out to no one in particular as she dodged another energy blast. "I'm starting to think you guys don't appreciate Earth's rich cultural heritage. I mean, have you even tried pizza? Or roller coasters? Or competitive dog grooming?" A particularly large Kralax warrior charged at her, mandibles gnashing. Sarah sidestepped at the last moment, allowing the alien to crash into a conveniently placed stack of energy cell crates. The resulting explosion sent Kralax flying in all directions. "Ooh, fireworks!" Sarah exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with a manic light. "Now that's more like it. Nothing says cultural exchange like high explosives, am I right?" Back on the command ship, Zixtral was seriously reconsidering his career choices. He joined the Galactic Peacekeeping Force to make a difference, to foster understanding between species. Now here he was, watching a member of a species that hadn't even mastered faster than light travel single-handedly dismantle one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. Sir, the Plixna officer spoke up again. Her skin now a sickly green. The human's vital signs are, well, we're getting even more extreme, but I didn't think that was possible. Oh, Zixtral sighed, a sound that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul or souls, depending on which xenobiologist you asked. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? I'm sure any moment now she'll start breathing fire or shooting lasers from her eyes. It would be par for the course at this point. As if the universe had heard his sarcastic prediction and decided to one-up it. Sarah chose that moment to pick up a Krelax tank. Not a handheld weapon, mind you, but an actual armored assault vehicle. With a roar that was equal parts battle cry and punchline to some cosmic joke, she proceeded to use said tank as an impromptu baseball bat, swatting Krelax soldiers out of the sky as they attempted to swarm her. "Hey, batter," Sarah shouted, her voice filled with unholy glee. "Swing, batter. Come on, who's up for some extraterrestrial t-ball?" Breen turned to Zixtral, his expression a mixture of awe and terror. "Sir, I think I speak for everyone when I say, what in the name of all that's holy is happening down there?" Zixtral, who had long since given up on maintaining any semblance of professional decorum, simply shrugged. "What's happening, my dear Vreen, is that we're witnessing evolution in action. Specifically, we're seeing why you don't mess with a species that evolved on a planet that's actively trying to kill them every single day." "But sir," another officer chimed in, this one a Glixtor with more tentacles than Zixtral cared to count. "Surely this level of combat prowess isn't natural. Could the human be using some kind of performance-enhancing substances?" Sarah, who seemed to have a knack for providing perfectly timed responses to the aliens' questions, chose that moment to launch into another monologue. "And I really should thank you guys," she said, her tone conversational, despite the fact that she was currently using 2 Krelax as makeshift nunchucks. "I've been trying to quit caffeine for years, but man, nothing gets the blood pumping like a good old-fashioned alien invasion. Who needs coffee when you've got adrenaline, am I right?" Zixtral turned to the Glixtor officer, his expression deadpan. "There's your answer. The human's secret weapon is bean juice. Truly, we are in the presence of a superior life form." As the battle, if one could call such a one-sided affair a battle, raged on, Zixtral found himself oddly captivated by the human's fighting style. It was chaos incarnate, a whirlwind of improvisation and sheer audacity that defied all conventional military tactics. One moment she was using a Krelax energy rifle as an impromptu pogo stick, the next she was surfing on a piece of fallen debris, raining destruction on the alien forces below. "Do you know," Sarah called out, her voice echoing across the battlefield, "I'm starting to think you guys didn't really think this invasion through. I mean, did we even do a basic risk assessment? Any decent project manager would have flagged potential for single human to derail entire operation as a major concern." A Krelax commander, clearly at his wit's end, screeched out a reply in his native tongue. The ship's universal translator kicked in, converting the alien sounds into something approximating coherent speech. "Insignificant Earth creature," the translation blared. "You cannot hope to stand against the might of the Krelax Empire. Our forces span galaxies. Our technology is beyond your comprehension. We will." The commander's tirade was cut short as Sarah, with unerring accuracy, threw a piece of debris directly into his mandibles. The alien fell back, more shocked than hurt, his epic speech reduced to muffled gurgling. "Sorry, buddy," Sarah quipped, not sounding sorry at all. "I have a strict no monologuing policy during invasions. It's right up there with no wire hangers and no swimming for 30 minutes after eating." Back on the command ship, Vreen turned to Zixtral, his expression a mixture of confusion and Grusian admiration. "Sir, I have to ask, why aren't we helping the Krelax? They are, technically, part of the Galactic Confederation." Zixtral fixed his second in command with a stare that could have frozen a sun. "Help them. Vreen, my dear, deluded friend. Let me explain something in terms even you can understand. What we're witnessing here is not just a battle. It's not even just an ass-kicking of galactic proportions. No, what we're seeing is a very important lesson in interstellar relations." He gestured grandly at the view screen, where Sarah was now using a Krelax flag as a makeshift bullfighting cape, taunting a group of increasingly frustrated alien soldiers. "That human down there is single-handedly rewriting the balance of power in our sector of the galaxy, and she's doing it with nothing but her bare hands, a knife, and an apparently inexhaustible supply of wisecracks." "But Sir," Vreen pressed, "surely our mandate." "Our mandate," Zixtral interrupted, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "is to keep the peace. And I don't know about you, but I'd say letting little Miss Armageddon down there finish her work is our best bet for long-term stability. Or would you prefer to explain to the Galactic Council why we interfered with a clear-cut case of planetary self-defense? As if to punctuate Zixtral's point, Sarah chose that moment to commandeer one of the Krelax's own ships. The sleek, insectoid craft rose unsteadily into the air, piloted by hands that had clearly never touched alien controls before, but were adapting with terrifying speed. "Woohoo!" Sarah's voice crackled over the comms. "Hey Krelax, your ship handling is almost as bad as your invasion planning. Ever heard of ergonomics? My great-aunt Mildred could design a better cockpit, and she thinks the height of technology is a TV with a remote control." The Krelax forces, already in disarray, seemed to collectively lose whatever passed for their minds at the sight of a human piloting one of their own ships. Panic spread through their ranks like wildfire, with entire battalions turning tail and fleeing. Zixtral watched the chaos unfold with a mixture of horror and reluctant admiration. "You see, Vreen, this is why we don't intervene. The universe has a way of sorting these things out on its own, usually with a great deal of property damage and questionable one-liners, but who are we to argue with the cosmic order?" As the battle, or perhaps rout would be a more accurate term at this point, entered its final stages, Sarah's stolen ship swooped low over the Krelax command center. And with a move that defied several laws of physics and probably a few of common sense, she ejected herself from the cockpit, somersaulted through the air, and landed feet first on the head of the Krelax Supreme Commander. "Hey there, big guy," Sarah chirped, as if she were greeting an old friend rather than stomping on the head of an alien warlord. "You know, where I come from, it's customary to bring a gift when you visit someone's planet. Flowers, chocolates, a nice bottle of wine, not, a full-scale invasion force. Just a little cultural tidbit for your next conquest attempt. Assuming you ever stop running long enough to try again, that is." The Supreme Commander, a massive specimen that towered over his subordinates, let out a bellow of rage that shook the very ground. He reached up with his enormous claws, intent on swatting this insignificant human off his carapace. Sarah, displaying the preternatural reflexes that had defined her performance throughout the battle, simply stepped aside. The commander's swing, meeting nothing but air where the human had been a split second before, continued its arc, right into his own face. The sound of chitin cracking echoed across the battlefield, followed by a comical thud as the Supreme Commander knocked himself unconscious. Sarah hopped down from her perch, landing lightly on her feet. She dusted off her hands, looking for all the world like someone who had just finished a mildly strenuous household chore, rather than single-handedly repelling an alien invasion. "Well," she announced to the stunned Krelax forces surrounding her, "I'd say that wraps things up nicely. Now, who wants to explain to your bosses back home why you're returning with your thoraxes between your legs? Any volunteers? No. Tough crowd." On the command ship, Zixtral's bridge had fallen into a silence so profound it seemed to have physical weight. The assembled alien officers stared at their view screens, their expressions a universal language of disbelief, awe, and not a small amount of terror. Vreen was the first to break the silence. "Sir," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, What do we do now?" Zixtral, who had spent the last few hours oscillating between existential dread and hysterical amusement, found that he had finally achieved a state of perfect, zen-like calm. He turned to his second-in-command, a serene smile on his face. "What do we do now, Vreen? Why, it's quite simple. We do what any sane, rational beings would do when faced with a force of nature beyond our comprehension." He paused for dramatic effect, enjoying the way every eye, or sensory organ, on the bridge was fixed upon him. "We file our report, recommend that Earth be immediately classified as a Class X Deathworld, and then we go to the nearest space station and drink, until we forget every single detail of what we just witnessed." A murmur of agreement rippled through the bridge crew. It wasn't the most professional response, perhaps, but given the circumstances, it seemed like the only logical course of action. As the Galactic Peacekeeping Force ship prepared to depart, Zixtral couldn't help but take one last look at the view screen. Sarah was still down there, striking a pose atop a pile of unconscious Krelax soldiers, looking for all the world like some bizarre interstellar action hero. Zixtral mused, more to himself than to his crew. "I can't help but wonder what would happen if we introduced her to the Zorgnax. You remember them, right? The ones who think they're the galaxy's gift to warfare." Vreen's eyes widened in horror. "Sir, you can't possibly be suggesting." "Oh, but I am, my dear Vreen," Zixtral replied, a mischievous glint in his 4 eyes. "I think it's high time the Zorgnax learned a little humility. And who better to teach them than our new friend down there?" As if on cue, Sarah's voice crackled over the comms again. "Hey up there, I know you've been watching. Don't suppose you've got any other invasions that need thwarting. I'm all warmed up now, and it seems a shame to waste all this adrenaline." Zixtral couldn't suppress a chuckle. "My dear human," he responded, activating the ship's external speakers. "How would you like to be our official galactic peace enforcer?" There was a moment of silence. Then Sarah's laughter filled the air. "Galactic peace enforcer? I like the sound of that. Does it come with a fancy badge? Ooh, or maybe a cool spacesuit. I've always wanted to try zero-G combat." As Zixtral began to explain the finer points of her new position, which he was absolutely making up on the spot, he couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. The galaxy was about to get a whole lot more interesting and probably a lot more explosion-filled. Meanwhile, down on the planet's surface, Sarah was busy tying up the last of the Krelax soldiers with their own communication cables. As she worked, she hummed a jaunty tune that sounded suspiciously like "Another One Bites the Dust." "You know," she said conversationally to a particularly groggy Krelax warrior, "I really should thank you guys. I haven't had this much fun since that time I accidentally wandered into a Black Friday sale at Walmart. So between you and me, those middle-aged ladies fighting over discounted toasters were a lot scarier than you lot." The Krelax warrior gurgled something that might have been a response or possibly just a plea for mercy. Sarah chose to interpret it as the former. "Oh, you think this was impressive? Buddy, you should see what we humans do for fun. Ever heard of extreme ironing? No? How about cheese rolling? Trust me. Once you've seen a bunch of humans chase a wheel of cheese down a near vertical hill, you'll understand why we're not that impressed by alien invasions." As Sarah continued her impromptu stand-up routine for her captive, an increasingly confused audience, Zixtral's voice boomed from above. "Attention, Sarah of Earth. We've received clearance from Galactic Command. Your new position as Galactic Peace Enforcer has been approved. Would you like to come aboard and discuss the details of your first assignment?" Sarah's face lit up with a grin that would have sent shivers down the spine of any being with a survival instinct. "Oh, hell yes. Just give me a sec to finish gift wrapping these guys for the local authorities." With a speed that defied belief, and possibly several laws of physics, Sarah had the remaining Krelax trussed up and arranged in a neat pile. As a finishing touch, she placed a hastily scribbled sign on top that read, "Free to a good home. Warning may bite." As a shimmering beam from Zixtral's ship began to envelop her, Sarah turned to face the defeated Krelax army. "Well, boys, it's been real. Thanks for the workout. Oh, and a word of advice? Next time you decide to invade a planet, maybe do a little research first. I hear the fluffy bunny nebula is nice this time of year. Much less likely to kick your thoraxes 6 ways from Sunday." And with that parting shot, Sarah dematerialized, leaving behind a scene of carnage, confusion, and not a small amount of property damage. Aboard Zixtral's ship, the mood was a peculiar mix of awe, terror, and resigned acceptance. As Sarah materialized in the transporter room, the assembled crew couldn't help but take a collective step back. "Well, hello there," Sarah chirped, seemingly oblivious to the effect she was having on the aliens. "Nice ship you've got here. Love what you've done with the place. Very spacey." Zixtral, who had appointed himself as the official human handler, a decision he was already beginning to regret, stepped forward. "Welcome aboard, Sarah. I trust you found your interaction with the Krelax stimulating." Sarah's grin, if possible, grew even wider. "Stimulating? Oh, honey, that was better than my morning coffee. Speaking of which, you wouldn't happen to have a cafeteria on this fancy starship, would you? All that invasion thwarting really works up an appetite." As Zixtral led Sarah towards the ship's dining area, while simultaneously signaling for the security team to be on high alert, he couldn't help but ponder the absurdity of the situation. Here he was, a highly decorated commander of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, playing tour guide to a being that had just single-handedly repelled an invasion force. So Sarah said as they walked, her eyes darting around to take in every detail of the alien ship. "What's this I hear about a first assignment? Please tell me it involves more action. Ooh, or diplomacy. I've always wanted to try my hand at intergalactic negotiations. But I've been told I have a very persuasive right hook." Zixtral, who was beginning to develop a stress-induced eye twitch, managed a weak smile. "Ah, yes, about that. We've received reports of a situation in the Zorgnax system. It seems they're becoming a bit too ambitious in their expansion efforts." Sarah's eyes lit up with unholy glee. "Ambitious expansion efforts, you say? Well, we can't have that, can we? Tell me more about these Zorgnax. Are they the type to appreciate a good pun mid-battle? Because I've been working on my material and I'd hate for it to go to waste." As Zixtral began to brief Sarah on the Zorgnax, while silently saying a prayer for the poor, unsuspecting aliens, the rest of the crew watched in a mixture of fascination and horror. Breen, ever the voice of reason, or at least attempted reason, leaned in to whisper to his commander, "Sir, are we absolutely sure this is a good idea? I mean, unleashing her on the Zorgnax. It seems a bit like using a supernova to light a candle." Zixtral, his eyes never leaving Sarah, who was now attempting to arm wrestle a Glixtor crew member using one of her legs, simply shrugged. My dear Vreen, at this point I'm not sure we have much choice. Besides, think of it as a cultural exchange. We're simply introducing the Zorgnax to one of the galaxy's most interesting species. You mean most terrifying, Sir Vreen muttered. Same difference? Zixtral replied cheerfully. Now, be a good chap and make sure the Zorgnax Conflict Resolution Handbook is updated. I have a feeling we're going to need to add a whole new chapter after this. As the Galactic Peacekeeping Force ship set a course for the Zorgnax system, with its new peace enforcer on board, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. Whether that was a good thing or not remained to be seen, but it was certainly going to be entertaining. And somewhere, in the vast cosmic tapestry, the universe itself seemed to chuckle. It had been a while since things had gotten this interesting. As the Galactic Peacekeeping Force ship hurtled through hyperspace towards the Zorgnax system, Sarah had made herself right at home. Much to the crew's bewilderment and Zixtral's growing migraine, she had taken it upon herself to upgrade various ship systems. You call this a weapon system? Sarah's voice echoed from inside a maintenance shaft. I've seen more firepower in a playground water balloon fight. Zixtral massaged his temples, wondering if it was too late to drop her off at the nearest black hole. My dear Sarah, perhaps we should focus on the mission briefing rather than whatever it is you're doing to my ship. Sarah's head popped out of the shaft, her hair wild and a manic grin on her face. Multitasking, Commander. It's a human specialty. Besides, if we're going to face these Zorgnax fellows, we might as well do it with style. How do you feel about glitter bombs? Before Zixtral could formulate a response that didn't involve screaming into the void, the ship's alarms blared. Vreen's panicked voice came over the comm. Sir, we've got a problem. The Zorgnax fleet, they're here. As the crew rushed to battle station, Sarah casually strolled onto the bridge, munching on what appeared to be a sandwich made entirely of alien fruits and possibly some engine parts. Well, she said, eyeing the massive Zorgnax armada on the view screen. Looks like the party started without us. How rude. Zixtral, who had long since given up on maintaining any semblance of normal protocol, simply sighed. I don't suppose you have any brilliant ideas for dealing with a fleet that outnumbers us 1,000 to 1. Sarah's grin could have powered a small sun. Oh, Commander, I thought you'd never ask. What followed was a display of tactical insanity that would be talked about in galactic peacekeeping force bars for centuries to come. Sarah, armed with nothing but her wits, a half-eaten sandwich, and a ship full of increasingly hysterical aliens, proceeded to run circles around the Zorgnax fleet. She hijacked their communication channels, flooding them with an endless stream of Earth's most annoying pop songs. She used the ship's newly upgraded weapon systems to launch what could only be described as a barrage of weaponized memes across space. At one point, she even managed to convince 3 Zorgnax battlecruisers that they had won an all-expenses-paid vacation to a black hole. As the Zorgnax fleet fell into chaos, their formations crumbling under the sheer absurdity of Sarah's tactics, Zixtral could only watch in awe. I don't believe it, Vreen muttered, his eyes wide. She's actually winning. Sarah, who was now wearing what appeared to be a makeshift cape made from discarded alien technology, turned to the crew with a wink. Winning? Oh, honey, I'm just getting started. Now, who wants to see me make their flagship do the Macarena? Hours later, as the last of the Zorgnax ships limped away in retreat, the bridge of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force ship erupted in cheers. Sarah, covered in a mixture of sweat, glitter, and what might have been engine oil, took a theatrical bow. Thank you, she said, grinning from ear to ear. I'll be here all week. Try the veal or whatever the alien equivalent is. Zixtral, who looked like he had aged several decades in the span they obey, approached Sarah with a mixture of respect and residual terror. Sarah of Earth, he began, his voice solemn. On behalf of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, I must say that was the most ridiculous, irresponsible, and utterly brilliant display I have ever witnessed. Sarah beamed. Aw, shucks, Commander, you're making me blush. So what's next? Any other bullies in the galaxy need a good old-fashioned Earth-style butt-kicking. As if in answer to her question, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A holographic image of a stern-looking alien appeared, adorned with enough metals to sink a small planet. Commander Zixtral, the alien intoned, its voice dripping with authority. This is High Admiral Koztok of the Galactic Council. We've received reports of your unorthodox handling of the Zorgnax situation. Explain yourself immediately. Sarah, never one to miss an opportunity, sidled up to the hologram with a cheeky grin. Well, hello there, handsome, she purred, causing the High Admiral's eye stalks to twitch in confusion. Let me tell you a little story about how Earth just saved the galaxy's bacon. Got about 3 hours. As Sarah launched into a retelling of events that somehow involved space pirates, a dance-off, and an impromptu cooking show, Zixtral couldn't help but smile. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing after all. In the weeks and months that followed, Sarah's reputation grew to legendary proportions. She became known across the stars as the Deathworlder diplomat, a being capable of ending wars with nothing but bad puns and interpretive dance. The galactic peacekeeping foresaw a surge in recruitment, though whether it was out of admiration or a desire to witness the chaos firsthand was anyone's guess. As for Sarah herself, she took to her new role with gusto, traveling the cosmos and leaving a trail of bewildered aliens and averted crises in her wake. And if the occasional planet ended up covered in glitter or spontaneously burst into synchronized dance routines, well, that was just part of the Sarah Martinez experience. Back on Earth, news of Sarah's exploits eventually trickled down through classified channels. NASA executives were seen alternating between fits of hysterical laughter and bouts of heavy drinking. The Cultural Exchange Program was quietly rebranded as the Galactic Havoc Prevention Initiative, with Sarah as its poster child. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, aboard a ship that now sported racing stripes and a disco ball, Sarah Martinez looked out at the stars and grinned. The galaxy was full of wonders, dangers, and beings who took themselves far too seriously. And she, armed with nothing but her wit, her strength, and an inexhaustible supply of terrible jokes, was ready to take it all on. As Zixtral often said, usually while nursing a strong drink, the universe may never be ready for humans, but by the cosmic constants, they sure make things interesting. And with that, dear readers, we leave our intrepid hero to her next adventure. For in a universe full of terror and wonder, sometimes all you need is a human with a bad attitude and a good right hook to set things right.